Oh, right.
Hello, beloved church family of the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Judith Roberts, and I am your host tonight. I welcome you to our midweek Oasis Wednesday night service. As you will be able to experience tonight, our Wednesday night Oasis is a place where we come together as a community to be spiritually refreshed between Sundays. Most Wednesday night services build upon the theme of the previous Sunday, expressing science of mind principles and practices with the intention that the gatherings be informal, intimate, and interactive. Our annual theme for 2025 is Rising Higher, Growing Deeper. Our monthly theme for July is Rolling in the Deep. Last Sunday, Lisa Ferraro introduced ideas inspired by the talk title of Living Out and Loud. And tonight, our speaker will continue with the related topic, Living Out Loud. As we gather tonight, I really want to welcome you. If you're new to our community or watching this recording, please visit our homepage at www.oaklandcsl.org and click on the I'm New icon. And look at the lower left-hand corner of that page to submit your email address. Once you do, you'll begin receiving the Village News newsletter once a week on Thursdays in your email. It has all the information on what is happening at the center in the coming weeks. Before we get started with the talk, please mute your own audio microphone during tonight's service. You can leave your camera on. When you mute your audio, it will improve the quality of our recording and tonight's transmission. And please stay tuned through the end of the service to receive special and important announcements. So now I want to introduce our speaker, Christopher Brown. Christopher knows that we are all independent researchers trying to figure out the mysteries of life. His research has taught him to reject any wisdom that does not know how to cry, any philosophy which does not know laughter, and any greatness which is not humbled by the joy of children. So the best we can do is to hold each other's hand as we walk through the mysteries of life together. So Christopher, thank you in advance for being our speaker tonight. As we do with every organized event at the center, we open with prayer. So Christopher, will you be doing the honors tonight?
Sure.
All right.
All right. So let's take a breath together. And as we do so, we're feeling the body, this gift of life. And as we experience this gift of life, we experience those on this Zoom call as a part of this gift also. And in this interconnection, as we're coming together this evening to meet one another, to speak, to share ideas, to learn something, we are so blessed because it is in community that we grow and that we do appreciate one another and that we learn from one another. So from that point, this evening is already a success. And I anchor that by saying, yup, and so it is.
And so it is. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to be talking about the concept of what does it mean to live out loud? I mean, to really be out there. And for me, being out there isn't about being louder or putting on a new set of clothes or being flashy or any of that. It's really being out at my growing edge. And that growing edge would be for some people, if you're an introvert, it might be to be a little louder. For an extrovert, it might be a little quieter. So what, in a sense, is our growing edge in terms of how do we want to be genuine? How do we want to be real? And what I know is, it seems for all of us, is that we are most real when we simply have forgotten ourselves and nobody's watching and we're just puttering around the house or doing what we do um, in a very natural, spontaneous way. So for me, it would be the courage to live from that place where nobody's watching, it's natural, it's spontaneous. And what a relaxed way of being that could be. Now, the problem is we were born with this naturalness. And very soon in our lives, we were taught not to be too noisy, not to do this, not to do that. And that's important because that's part of society and learning how to be in society. But at the same time, we've learned at some level that we're deficient, that we're just not okay the way we are. And that's systemic throughout all populations, is that we're not okay exactly the way we are. And so, from that point of view, how could we be natural? Because natural is not going to be okay. We're going to have to be better than who we think we are. We're going to have to put on airs. We're going to have to puff up. We're going to have to walk into the party like we're somebody. Hi, my name's Chad. You know, and I'm going to. And we put on the facade. And if you've ever tried to meet somebody in their facade, what's your experience? Do you feel they're genuine, they're real? Can you connect with them? And in my experience, I feel lonely because I'm talking to an image, a projection of who they think they want to be. So, that being said, what would it be like to drop the facade? And do we even know how much facade that we're presenting to the world? How comfortable are we in our own skins? Guy Clark has this great song, and some of the words in there are um, you've got you've got to sing like you don't need the money. You've got to love like you'll never get hurt. You've got to dance, dance, dance like there's nobody watching. It's got to come from the heart if you want life to work. So there's something about that song that I gave that song to a friend of mine, and that was like 40 years ago, and he reminded me of that. He said, that song blew my mind. You know, I started practicing that. You know, what's it like when there's nobody watching? What's it like when you're just singing and you lose yourself in that? So there's a guy named Socio, and he was a master, very wise Zen master. And he had lots of students, and he was in the process of leaving. He was dying. And he gathers all of his students together and he said, you know, I'm going to be dying. And they said, oh, master, you can't leave us. You know, what are we going to do without your wisdom? What are we going to do? You can't leave us like this. And Socio said, well, I'm sorry, I am. Well, let me ask you one question. That was the head student, the master student. He said, do you have any regrets? Are you worried about anything as you pass over to death? Are there any worries whatsoever? And Socio thought for a moment and said, yes, there is one. Well, everyone broke out going, whoa, how could you be? You're fearless. You've led us out of the wilderness like a Moses. You've judged us so justly like a Solomon, and you've loved us like a Jesus. And Socio said, oh, no, 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 no. When I meet the other side, I am not going to be asked if I was like Moses or Solomon or Jesus. The big question, and that's what I'm afraid of, is were you Socio? Were you yourself, your authentic self? Well, that quieted everybody down, because how often are we told to be your natural self? And do you know what your nature is? And that's the examination. That's not picking up more reading from a book. That's actually opening your own book and reading your own story. And to find out how fascinating your own story is. And sharing that story and that naturalness is very powerful. And when we share those stories from that place to one another, you know what happens. You become interested when it's real, when it's authentic. I'm interested. I want to hear. And when it's not, when it's a projection of ego and projection of I want to look good and this and that, you feel the difference. You go, oh, okay, give me more. I'm bored still. But it's what's real that attracts us. Because when you're around somebody who's real, it gives me permission to be real also and to drop into a place where we can connect and truly connect where it's nurturing. Because for egos to meet egos, there's not much connection. But when hearts reach, when hearts touch, then there's a flow of energy that's magnificent. And you feel the difference. And you know what I'm talking about. You've all felt this. So we have a small group tonight. And so I think what we might do is break us out into not just yet, but to break us out and to discuss what does it mean to live out loud or to live courageously? What does that mean? Or what does that look like in your life? What is it like to live naturally as if nobody is watching? To be undefended so that you can actually really be with somebody in a very vulnerable way. So I'm going to ask Sunshine is our master hostess of the hostess with the mostest. There you go. And she is going to break us out into two groups of three each so that we can take a look at this. What's it like to be, to live out loud, to be genuine, to be natural? Okay, when you're ready, you can break us out.
You ready, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, we got two groups teeing it up. Have fun, discussion. And for how long is it?
Let's make it 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay, here we go. Be sure to join. Hi, Dorothy. You there?
Hi, Freddie. Welcome.
Hey there, everyone. Thanks for your patience.
Freddie, Reverend Sunshine, welcome again. Thank you for yeah, taking care of yourself and your friend, and Reverend Sunshine for filling in. She asked us in the beginning about the recording. Where does the recording go?
It's okay. Wait, I sent it to the cloud, so, you know, I think they can grab it and
Okay.
we're good. And we've got the transmission, so go, Christopher.
Go, Christopher.
You're muted.
There you go.
Okay. What came up for you? What is it like when you're natural? Let's say you're in your kitchen just putzing around. What does that feel like? And I hope Brady will chime in for what she had to say because it was lovely. But does anyone what does that feel like when you're just, and who would like to talk about what came up for you in your discussion? And if you don't speak up, I will call on you. So unmute yourself and join the conversation. Okay, Brady, I want to hear from you. That was brilliant.
Well, I'm not sure what to say. I know I talked about the smallness that I feel and why, and I talked about the contribution of community and making that the community feel, you know, participating feel larger in my life and in my experience. But I talked about, you know, the small feeling because I was taught to be small, because it was deemed to be safer to be small. And when I was growing up, I have parents that came from the South after World War II and that kind of thing, and they were fleeing the oppression of the South and all that could happen to you there. So I grew up kind of in a situation where I was taught not to raise my hand because that could be treacherous. And so I was taught to be small. And so in my larger expression, community plays an important part, and all of community, and especially the diversity, because it's wonderful to embrace diversity and feel it and to be in it. And it's worthy of its own value. And so I talked about the value of community and diversity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And I want to underscore what you're saying about playing small. This is for every one of us, in a sense, hides our light under the bush. Because it's dangerous, and we've been taught that it's not okay, or somehow we're deficient. That light is not okay. And so, in a sense, we've abandoned a part of ourselves. And it's perhaps time to go back and to find those pieces of luminescence that we've left under the bush, or the basket, or whatever that saying goes. And that's where the courage comes in. The courage comes in, do I speak my mind and be vulnerable and attract attention? And that's a really tough one. It's a really tough one. That's when we say speaking out loud or living out loud. That's really, can I speak from that place of integrity within me? And can I speak from my values? And that's where the courage comes. Because it's not safe. You could be laughed at. You will be judged. But is it more important to avoid that, or is it more important to reconnect to what your values are and to express that, and perhaps get some validation for being what, who you are and what you truly believe? Who else would like to add to this conversation? Judith, you always have a contribution.
I was just thinking, we talked about risk, which is what you just talked about.
Yeah.
And I said that I remembered that courage, the root word of courage is coeur in French, which means heart. And that courage, one definition of courage is to stand by one's core. And so I talked about that courage for me looks like standing by my core, by my belief, by my truth in the face of opposition. That if there's opposition or if there's disagreement, and this can be on a small scale, it can be a family situation or it can be wider community, but that it takes courage to, stick to my truth and express it in the face of opposition. And and in the extreme situation, it can mean being in a dangerous situation. As we're seeing, in the world and in the new people protesting and being shut down or captured or put in jail or whatever, but speaking their truth for a purpose. So yeah, it does mean vulnerability and risk, but it involves certainty of what I am, who I believe, what I believe, and speaking truth to power.
Nice.
I'm complete.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. Who else would like to add before we move on? Akia. If you unmute yourself.
Okay. So I talked about when I started the prison ministry.
Mhm.
I was in Umma's organization, and we were writing letters to community members who were alone or sick or something. And somebody came up to me and said, "You people ought to reach out to folks in prison." And I thought that was the craziest idea. Then a couple of weeks later, another person said the very same thing. When the third person said, "You people ought to be reaching out to people in prison," I said, "Okay,
Mhm.
I think I'm supposed to open up to this possibility and find out how we could do it so that everybody benefits and no one gets hurt." And so that was, and continuing on with that, was my example of doing something courageously. And it was, in other words, it was doing something new and something I could never even imagine doing. But going ahead, because it had been suggested 3 times, I thought, okay, Spirit must want me to do this, so I better get on it. So that was my story. And I'm sticking to it.
What, just if I may ask, what was the primary obstacle to actually moving forward?
For me, just that I had absolutely no idea what we could do that
Mhm.
that would do that thing, benefit us and benefit the people in prison. I didn't know how to do it. I just didn't have a clue at all. So we started by writing letters, and we had one person who was in Illinois who had just gotten out of jail. And so we wrote to all his friends. And then we got the idea, why don't we send something out every month? So that was the beginning of the Freedom Anywhere newsletter, to send them uplifting and inspiring articles so they would get a new outlook. And meanwhile, people were hearing about us and got in touch, and all of a sudden we were doing this, sending something out every month to inmates in 20 states. So it grew pretty rapidly. There was definitely a need for it.
So I'm going to maybe put words in your mouth, but you moved forward in not knowing.
Hmm.
There was no, you found your way. So there was a trust that you would find your way, and one step led to the next and led to the next. You didn't have to know the whole path. You just needed to know the next step.
Right.
And I think that when we look at this, how do I get to know myself? How do I be more genuine, more authentic? How does that happen? Well, it's one interaction at a time. It's being real with one person at a time until you find that you can float in this water of unknown. And I don't know how to be. Was a hospice chaplain, and in bereavement. And what I learned is you can't prepare to walk into a room to meet people who are grieving. You cannot prepare to know, to have something to say, because every time you walk in, it is so different. The best you can prepare is to get out of the way so that you can really listen. And I think that's going to be a part of real living, is getting out of the way, getting out of the way of my old habits and my old ways of being and my old limitations and my old being small and being guarded, to actually come in and to meet new people that are in grief, wide open and not knowing, and not having a formula, just meeting them.
Hmm.
And I think what's happened for me after a while, these actually came to me pretty easily, was to walk in and to feel. It's not to think, but it's to feel. What is it when I walk into the room? What does it feel like? And then speak to that which I'm feeling. And I swear, everybody wants to connect with the authentic. When someone is being real, it gives us permission to be real also. And that's where the connection comes, and that's where the love comes. And there's something about, when we have lunch in the social hall, and there's no pressure, you're eating and someone across the table says, "Hi, my name's this," and "Hi," and it's like conversation starts. It's very natural. It's not contrived. There's no agenda. It's just natural. And I think that this is a possibility for all of us to live this way, only all the time. But it takes practice. And one of the things, again, is that we will take a look at our deficiencies and say, well, no, I can't do that, or I can't do this, or this is, I've never been very good at this. Oh, I could never do that. And it's that self-limiting. And I want to tell a story about the fellow who started an Airbnb. This was out in the woods. This was like in the lakes up in Wisconsin, where they have all those lakes, but they also have a lot of geese that come in. Bought a beautiful piece of property, nice big lake. The geese would come in. And there was 2 resident geese there that were kind of cranky, and they were always around. And so he started the Airbnb, and his first guest came and everything went fine. The second guest came and the goose came over and attacked one of the women there, and she freaked out, wrote a horrible review. "I was attacked by a goose. I don't recommend this place. They're out of control." Well, this, the poor guy goes, we have to call the city. Is there anything I can do? And he calls the city and they said, sure, you can get some coyote urine and you can spray it all over the yard and that'll take care of it. They won't come down if they can smell coyote urine. So he goes on Amazon and sure enough, he buys coyote urine. It comes in the box. The box is actually broken and it's a little bit wet. So it's nasty, but he accomplishes, he sprays it all on the lawn and area. Nothing. It's not the goose says, we can take care of coyotes. We know how to deal with them. So that didn't work. So he calls up the city again and says, well, do you have anything better than coyote urine? And the guy says, yeah, you can shoot them. I don't want to shoot them. No, you can shoot them. They're predators. I mean, they're predatory and there's plenty of them and it's fine. They're on your property. You can shoot them. No, I'm not going to do that. But it gave him an idea to talk to some, like nature people. What should I do with coyotes? I mean, coyotes, but with these geese. And they said, well, why don't you make this like a bird sanctuary and market your Airbnb as a bird sanctuary? You can come here and watch birds. You can watch wild geese do their thing. He said, that's a great idea. And so he did. And guess what? He had full bookings. People love to come in. He also warned them, these are wild geese. They're very territorial, so keep your distance. Nobody had a problem. Nobody had a problem. So the point about this story is how we can take a deficit, shall we say, something that's not okay, and turn it into an asset. And this is, if you take a look at yourself, you might say that some of my biggest failures or something, they might be assets in disguise. Just like the man with the geese, he didn't know that these pesky geese were an asset. He didn't realize. And so for our next little quick breakout, and Freddie's going to break us out into two groups again, is we're going to take a look at what are some of your hidden assets that you don't even know that you have, in a sense. What do you think that is a shortcoming that actually could be an asset? If Susan were here, she would say, well, I can't draw. Well, she can draw. She just doesn't like the way she draws because she's afraid of criticism. But she draws. I mean, she draws and it's very whimsical. And I enjoy them. But you can see that that would be an example of something that could be shifted in the way she holds it. So, Freddie, if you'll break us out for probably about another 8 minutes, and we'll go for it. It's like Freddie's at the beach. We're at the sand dunes. All righty. Quickly, is there anybody would like to share anything from what they talked about or discussed? Is there something you wanted to say, Akia? You'll have to unmute. There you go.
Both Judith and I were talking about the deficit, you might say, or the problem of collecting lots and lots of paper and then not quite knowing what to do with it and having to put it somewhere and so on and so forth. And then eventually you have to deal with it. You got to look at it. and finding all these treasures. That the
Mm-hmm.
only problem is that you didn't discover them a little sooner. So Judith talked about finding a check she didn't realize was there. And I'm just doing that now and finding all sorts of things that I collected for one reason or another. And it connects me back to the experience and the reason I got involved in whatever it was to have this document in my possession. And I don't know, pretty amazing the things that I'm rediscovering that I had forgotten all about.
There you go.
So
Thank you.
that's me.
Let's, guess with that, I'll try to wrap this up. If we want to, I guess, really live, it's kind of like what Guy Clark said, and it's like, sing like you don't need the money, so that you leave everything on the court. You just belt it out. And that you love like you're never going to get hurt. You just walk in wide open, abandoned, and if you get hurt, you'll learn from it. And the last part is you dance, 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 that you enter the dance and that you dance it until you disappear into the dance. And for me, that's happened, that used to happen at the ashram when we would dance, and it's what the dervishes do in Islam, the Sufis, where you actually just disappear and it's just the movement, it's just the flow. And you've all experienced this when you've disappeared into a song, or that the thinking stopped and you were just present to what was happening in life. And those are those moments that we can't bring back, and we can use those as an anchoring point. And as Howard Thurman would say, we'd keep those moments, those points of high resolve, those points of recognition, so that we can remember those times when we need to remember those times. So if we get anything for tonight, it would be to look at what's it like to be natural, just to be in your own living room with nobody there. So how do you act and behave when there's nobody in the apartment or nobody in the house? What's it like when you're all alone and just chilling? What's that like? And could we bring that state of almost no mind into our daily life? As a practice, that's an experiment. And so that's it for today, for this evening. I really thank everyone for showing up and having this conversation. I know I've got a lot out of it, so thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. Yeah, very, very rich and intriguing questions. Really enjoyed that. Small but mighty group tonight.
Mighty.
Yeah. So we're going to transition now into our announcements. And Freddie, you can bring up our slides. So this Sunday, July 6th, the Reverend Dr. Sunshine Michelle Coleman, who was with us a little earlier, will be speaking on Remember with the River Dolphins. Sounds very intriguing. Meditation starts at 10, followed by service at 10:30. And yeah, let's support her in that talk. That sounds wonderful. We'll go to the next slide. And on Wednesday, July 9th, for our midweek oasis, practitioner Megan Lemon will offer an encore discussion on the topic of Remember with the River Dolphins, 6:30 p.m. meditation and 7 o'clock service. And tickets for the 80th anniversary gala on September 20th are on sale now. You can get your early bird tickets at the 10% discounted price by visiting oaklandcsl.org/events. And our 80th anniversary bag is now available in the bookstore. Get yours after Sunday service. And the OCSL Social Justice Ministry meets, oh, wait a minute. This is, yeah, so this is the slide we need. The Social Justice Ministry meets on the first Sunday of the month. So that will be this Sunday, July 6th, in the social hall from 1 to 3 p.m. Join us in sacred activism to create a world that works for everyone and a center that is intentionally inclusive to all. And the Social Justice Ministry virtual book study on Dr. Robin DiAngelo's newest book, Nice Racism, How Progressive White People Perpetuate Racial Harm, has been postponed until the fall of this year. Stay tuned for more information. And our nonprofit partner for July and August is Inside Circle. It's a nonprofit that's dedicated to fostering personal growth and healing among individuals impacted by the justice system, creating transformative programs for people inside the prison system, programs for currently and formerly incarcerated youth transitioning back into society, and much more. Visit their website at insidecircle.org for more information. And the Spirit Treasure Bookstore celebrates July with Meditating in the Garden. Items featured on the 30% off table include Buddha garden statues, malas, wind chimes, singing bowls, and journals. Be sure to pick up your OCSL 80th anniversary bag also at the bookstore, which is $15 plus tax. And I want to highlight our team at OCSL. We have Reverend Dr. Sunshine Michelle Coleman, who was on the call earlier tonight, who's our senior minister. Co-lead of the Ministry of Prayer, Megan Lemon, who's one of our practitioners, and co-lead of the Ministry of Prayer, Maureen Mulena, who's also one of our practitioners. And then we have Beth Van Arkel, who's our board president, Steve Carter, who's our operations coordinator, Susan Brecker, practitioner, who's facility usage coordinator, and Dow Becker, who's our bookkeeper. So shout out to all of them for the great work they're all doing in keeping our center running and humming. And now we'll move into our joyous giving time. You can read this with me or silently. Just let's take a breath. Let's take a moment and take this into our hearts. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies this offering. It blesses all that I am, all that I give, and all that I circulate. Thank you, love, as me, and so it is. And so if you feel inspired to donate to our center and support us, you can go to ocsl.org and then you can click on this purple donate button, and that will take you to all these different ways you can donate. You can use Zelle, you can text to donate, you can use this QR code, you can write a check, you can donate by credit card, and of course, if you're there in person, you can put an offering, a cash offering in the offering basket. So any and all contributions are accepted, gratefully accepted, and nothing is too great and nothing is too small. We welcome your support in any way that you feel inspired to offer it. Thank you. And now I want to just acknowledge everybody who supports our Wednesday night programs. First of all, I want to thank our speaker, Christopher Brown, for this really engaging conversation and great breakout questions for the breakout rooms. It was really stimulating and thought-provoking. So thank you, Christopher. And I want to thank Susan Urquhart Brown, who led our meditation tonight. I want to thank Christopher again for leading us in our opening prayer. And in advance, I'm going to thank Reverend Ikea for leading us in our closing prayer. I also want to thank Reverend Elena Hutchinson and Reverend Ikea and Reverend Sunshine Michelle for their ongoing support of our Wednesday night Oasis. And I want to thank our Zoom team, which is really a team of one, but tonight Reverend Sunshine filled in also. I want to thank her for that. And Freddie Lambright III, who is running our PowerPoints and doing all of our behind the scenes work to make this run smoothly. Thank you, Freddie. And I want to thank Steve Carter, our operations coordinator, who puts together our PowerPoints and our announcements. So Steve isn't here tonight, but I always want to acknowledge and thank him for the work he does behind the scenes. And so with that, I think we're ready for our closing prayers. So Reverend Ikea, I'd like to turn this over to you now.
Thank you. Everybody, please take a deep breath and center yourselves in your hearts, your portable temple for God. And open all the doors and windows to see yourself and love yourself. And loving yourself, go forward from this moment on as your genuine self, that one you just recognized, that one that's courageous, that one that's ready to make a difference. Loving yourself, move forward as your authentic self. I give thanks for this session from beginning to end, from our wonderful speaker, Christopher Brown, Susan, and the meditation, and knowing the blessings flow to each of us. I release my word with happiness, knowing that all is well and we are free to be who we are and make a difference in the world. I give thanks and release my word. Please join me in anchoring the prayer by saying,
And
so
so it
So
is.
it is.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.